Hello and welcome to Devil's Advocate and a special interview with the Pakistan High Commissioner Salman Bashir on the killing of 5 Indian soldiers on the line of control and the impact on Indo-Pakistan relations. High Commissioner, let's start with the killing of 5 soldiers on the LOC. The Indian Defence Minister has said it's now clear that the specialist troops of the Pakistan Army were involved in the attack. As Pakistan High Commissioner, would you accept that?
I think we have seen the statement of the Defence Minister of India, and that is now the Indian government perspective. But let me say that the government of Pakistan has very clearly said that the Pakistan Army or any unit of the Pakistan Army was not involved in
so
this
you do not accept this claim by the Indian Defence Minister that specialist troops of the Pakistan Army were involved? You reject that?
Well, I would say that whatever has happened is indeed very sad. LOC has seen trouble since January, as we all know, and lives have been lost on both sides.
But was the Pakistan Army involved?
No.
Absolutely no.
Absolutely no. Because
if you reject the claim that the Pakistan Army was involved, can you deny that therefore it must be militant groups like the LTT and Jaish? Because there is no third alternative possible.
Well, it's not for me. I'm not in a position to say exactly what happened in this particular case, in this particular incident. But there are reports, and there are reports that have come also from within India and carried by the media, which give varying perspectives. But as I said, I'm not in a position to do a forensics of this particular situation.
Are you saying to me that it's possible that militants like the LTT and Jaish are involved? You just can't confirm it, nor can you deny it?
It's quite possible. It's quite possible. And let me just sort of mention here the facts as I have known from here. Our 2 Director Generals Military Operations, they, as you know, have a hotline. I understand that on the morning of the 6th of August, there was a hotline conversation between the Director Military Operations of the 2 sides. And I'm told that the Indian side did not mention any violation of the LOC at that point.
Are you
so it seems to me that a lot of constructions are being put on this incident. As I said, I'm not in a position to give specifics of it from...
Can I interrupt and ask you this? If you're saying that when the 2 Director Generals military operations spoke to each other on the hotline on the 6th, and the Indian side did not mention these killings, are you saying that at that point in time they did not believe that the Pakistan Army or anyone from the Pakistani side was responsible for them? Is that the conclusion you're drawing?
Well, I will not say that this is a conclusion that I am drawing, but it is quite evident from the way things have happened in terms of the statements that there is what I would say an afterthought that is involved.
There's an afterthought. In other words, when the first communication happened between the DGMO, this was not at the top of the mind of the Indian side.
It was not mentioned.
Let me go further with what the Defence Minister said in his second statement. He said, we all know that nothing happens from the Pakistan side of the line of control without support, assistance, facilitation, and often direct involvement of the Pakistan Army. Now, given that the 2 armies are not just face to face, but virtually eyeball to eyeball, this is probably an undeniable statement.
This is an old sort of an accusation that surfaces from time to time. I think it is important to focus on what is required, and this is what is required, as has been mentioned by the Prime Minister of Pakistan. We have existing military-to-military channels. They need to work, they need to do their work, and they have to be much more useful and more optimally utilized.
I take your point, but let's come back to something that you said you could neither confirm nor deny, and that was the question when I asked you, could militant groups like the Jaish and LTT be involved? If they are involved, how would they have crossed past Pakistani army troops without some support, assistance, facilitation, or direct permission from the Pakistan Army?
As I said, it is not just possible for me sitting in Delhi to give an account of what could have or could not have happened. The fact is, it's not only that they troops are on both sides of the LOC, but also there is the fence that's been constructed on the LOC. So I think it is counterproductive to go into the forensics of this specific incident.
Your predecessor, Foreign Secretary, and now in fact he is Special Envoy for Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, has said to the Times of India in London, our extremists have done it. It is meant to derail the peace process. If he, as Special Envoy to Mr. Nawaz Sharif, can say this, surely he must know what he's talking about.
I think I would like to sort of certainly interpret the intent of what has been quoted and attributed to Mr. Ambassador Shahryar. Ambassador Shahryar has echoed what is the government view, and that is that Pakistan, which is itself facing a spate of terrorist violence, is very determined to deal with all aspects of this
That
violence.
I accept, but you say he's echoed the government view, and what he says is our extremists have done it. So is that your government's position, that you accept your extremists have done it?
I don't think that is a construction that would be appropriate to make on
But when he says our
Shahryar's.
extremists have done it, what else could he mean?
Well, I cannot simply sort of, because I've seen it as you have seen it on the media, and I do not know exactly in what context he was speaking.
He's concurring with what you didn't disagree with, that the LET or Jaish could be responsible.
But what he is saying basically is that Pakistan is suffering from a spate of terrorist and extremist violence. And I think this is what is meant. There have been attacks, massive attacks, nearly every day in Pakistan, and I think that is what he's referring to.
Two questions arise from what Ambassador Shahryar Khan said. Indian Foreign Minister Salman Khurshid said to Devil's Advocate that it's a plausible theory that saboteurs or someone attempting to sabotage the peace process is responsible for the killings, but nonetheless, he added, whether it's saboteurs or whether it's someone from within the Pakistani system, either way, the Pakistani government is responsible.
Well, you have to understand the totality of the context, what Pakistan faces today. I think there is a gross misunderstanding, if not deliberate misrepresentation.
You mean things are so out of control in Pakistan that Pakistan's government and Pakistan's system can't be held responsible for what people within Pakistan are doing to India?
Pakistan government cannot be held responsible, nor can the Pakistan Armed Forces be made to account for what has happened on this side of the LOC.
But if it's extremists coming from Pakistan who are doing it, you're not responsible for that?
Well, Karan, let me tell you that security is indivisible. I think we better understand this concept very clearly, and it's got to be very clear to everybody that you cannot isolate. You cannot have security in one area and instability and violence in another. I think we have to we have to see the picture broadly, regionally, because we are being affected by a situation that has happened over decades. There's a historical context to it, and we are being affected by it. So this concept of that anything happening in India is basically happening because of Pakistan may or may not be true, because the point is that all of this is contagious.
One other question about the possibility of who did it from your side. If it is people seeking to sabotage the peace process, is it possible that elements of the ISI, rogue or otherwise, might be responsible? And the reason I ask you that is this. When in May and June, Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif first reached out to India, and he did so to great applause from this side of the border, it was widely reported that General Kayani had met him and warned him against making such overtures. Shortly thereafter, the stepped-up activity on the line of control, which you yourself mentioned, began to happen. And many believe that your army may be thwarting Nawaz Sharif, as a result of which some people say, is it elements of the ISI, rogue or otherwise, who are responsible for these killings?
Categorically, no. I think what you just mentioned is part of some sort of a propaganda against Pakistan. And I think I would not like to say it is well orchestrated, but you see it every day in the Indian media.
One other question about Mr. Shahryar Khan before I go further. Mr. Shahryar Khan has also said that Dawood Ibrahim was in Pakistan, although he says he's now been chased out. That clearly shows to the Indian authorities that every time they asked Pakistan about Dawood Ibrahim and Pakistan said he wasn't there, Pakistan wasn't being truthful.
I think the way Shahryar Khan's remarks have been quoted here in the media this morning or since last evening, I think he is being misunderstood. What he is saying is that Pakistan government is very determined to root out extremism and terrorism that afflicts us in the first place.
But how does that explain Dawood Ibrahim?
I'm not in the position to comment specifically on Dawood Ibrahim, but the point is that that is actually the operational aspect of policy as well as of intent, and that has to be accepted.
All right, let's come back to the Indian Defence Minister's statement. He also said in his second statement, this incident will have consequences for our relations with Pakistan. As Pakistan High Commissioner, how do you interpret those critical words?
Well, I think, of course, we have read the statement, we have listened to the remarks made by the Honorable Defence Minister of India. I think both countries, like any other country, basically act in their own respective national interests.
Are you disheartened by this statement?
Well, I think that the government of India will, of course, go and proceed on the basis of its national interest, as will the government of Pakistan. And I believe that our interests converge in combating extremism and terrorism.
I'll tell you why I'm asking. Because it's no secret that Pakistan has proposed dates for sometime in August and September for meetings reportedly at the Water Secretary or Foreign Secretary level. Now sources in India are letting the media know that the Indian government wants those talks to be put on hold. If that happens, will you be disappointed?
Well, you see, the whole debate here has been terror and talk, whether they go together or not. That's why I said that there is a gross misunderstanding and gross misreporting about intent and the actions that the government of Pakistan and the Pakistan Armed Forces and the Pakistan intelligence has taken, is taking, and has been explicitly stated by Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif of our determination to combat terrorism in all its forms.
In fact, Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, in the statement that he issued, went out of his way to say that he was greatly looking forward to meeting Dr. Manmohan Singh in New York at the end of September. But once again, Indian authorities seem to be suggesting through whispers and through sources that that meeting may not happen. How confident are you that the two prime ministers will meet in September?
All I can say is that our Prime Minister had in fact indicated in his interview with you prior to the elections and subsequently that his priority in foreign policy is to improve relations with India. He has most recently again reiterated that Pakistan will persist in its efforts to improve relations with India. And that, of course, means talking. And I believe personally that the process of Pakistan-India engagement requires a high-level meeting.
So can I conclude from that if the two prime ministers don't meet in September, Mr. Nawaz Sharif will be disappointed?
I would think so.
High Commissioner, let's take a break at that point. When I come back, I want to put to you the three concerns that Salman Bashir, the Indian Foreign Minister, has told devil's advocate he has with your Prime Minister's statement. That's in a moment's time. Don't go away. Welcome back to Devil's Advocate and an exclusive interview with Pakistan High Commissioner Salman Bashir. High Commissioner, let's now come to what the Indian Foreign Minister has told Devil's Advocate is his response to your Prime Minister's statement. Whilst he welcomes the statement, he says there are three areas where it falls short. To begin with, he says there is no acceptance of responsibility. How do you respond to that?
There is no question of acceptance of responsibility when it is quite clear to us that this is something that is being trumped up and being, there are situations, there are mechanisms to deal with a particular incident. Now, if in this incident, which took place well on the Indian side of the LOC, It was primarily for the Indian side to have investigated. But, you know, even the morning of the 6th, when the Indian
Quite right. You're saying the DGMOs didn't mention it.
Did not mention it. And then there is this thing that has come in the Indian media of the Indian army accusing the terrorists of launching an FIR,
I take your point. The second shortfall, Salman Khurshid said in Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif's statement, was that there is no accountability for what happened in Mumbai.
There is certainly accountability. And it's quite well known that there is a trial that is ongoing. There are persons
but it's
who
been
have been
without
accused.
a prosecutor for the last 4 months.
Karan, as I said, I have said with a degree of sadness that the picture is of Pakistan, of the intent as well as of the resilience and the resolve of our government, of our people, is not being understood at this point in time in India. The fact is that we have suffered massive attacks. On the 7th, we had this incident in which about 30 or 40 of our police officials were killed.
In Quetta.
Right. There are incidents every day where 10, 12, 40 people are losing their lives.
So you're saying to them, bear in mind that we suffer, and we suffer probably more, and therefore when you look for accountability or you look for responsibility, bear in mind that we are suffering probably more than you are.
And that, as I said earlier, security is indivisible. If we are suffering, then there is no guarantee that others or the region as a whole may not succumb to such sort of violence. And let me just add one other thing. You see, I am saddened also by the frenzy, that's been created, which inflames public sentiments. Our societies suffer from so many things. There's stark, abject poverty. There's hunger. There's disease. And now what we are deliberately injecting is ethnicity, communalism, sectarianism. And I'm
do you blame the Indian media for doing this?
I'm saying I'm talking here of the societies of this region. And if we continue to remain in this mode, then I'm sorry, we are not doing any good to our own people.
I accept that point. Let me now bring up the third point that Salman Khurshid made about Nawaz Sharif's statement. He says this is a shortfall. The statement, he says, does not take into account the extra mile that India has often gone to overcome difficulties in the peace process. You haven't recognized that India has often gone that extra mile.
I think our leadership, that is the leadership of Pakistan and India, they are clear-sighted and they are very, very determined, and they are focused on the future. I think there is a disconnect between what we see in the media, which is certainly not conducive to creating the right atmosphere, and that vision. From the present, whatever it is, we need to see what needs to be done, and that requires a constructive engagement.
My last question, because we're out of time. In the interview that Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif gave me in May, which you referred to yourself a moment ago, he gave a categoric assurance to the Indian people of two things. One, that Pakistani soil will not be used for terror against India. And secondly, that he would rein in Hafiz Saeed. Today, Indians turn around and say Pakistani soil is being used for terror against India. But more importantly, Hafiz Saeed continues to rant and rave. He makes speeches in Karachi threatening jihad, threatening more Red Fort-style attacks on India. Even though he's a wanted man with a 10 million bounty, he's holding Eid prayers in Gaddafi Stadium. And they ask, did Mr. Sharif mean what he said? Or has he forgotten what he said?
I think Hafiz Saeed's views are well known. The views of the Prime Minister of Pakistan, the government of Pakistan, and the people of Pakistan on all that concerns Pakistan, India, and Kashmir are also well known. So I think let's not mix up the two. Hafiz Saeed does not represent, does not speak for the government of Pakistan or the people of Pakistan.
My last question. I get the feeling right through this interview that you're actually appealing for understanding of Pakistan's own predicament, and you're also asking for understanding of the fact that if there is violence and trouble and terror in Pakistan, it's going to slip over. And you're saying to the Indian people, the Indian government, and the Indian press in particular, please try and understand that situation before you point accusing fingers. Have I summed that up accurately?
Well, I am not trying to be alarmist here. What I'm saying is that we are very determined to ensure that the territory of Pakistan does not have elements of this nature who are first of all targeting our people, our institutions.
And then targeting others.
And then targeting others. And there is a history and context to all of this.
And you're saying
and
bear that history in mind.
And therefore we have to keep our sights on the future. And what is the best course? The best course is to be able to work that vision of a peaceful and stable relationship and a peaceful and stable region.
High Commissioner, let's hope the future comes into the present as quickly as possible. A pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.